Have you ever, needed something specific done? Maybe finding a lost wallet or hitting a really tough goal, maybe getting a tricky task sorted, but you're not quite sure how much work it'll actually take or even who might end up doing it. What if you could just offer a reward for getting that result, successfully, without sweating the details of how it gets done? Well, that's exactly the kind of thing we're going to unpack today. We're doing a deep dive into this really powerful, flexible concept from Islamic finance and law. It's called al-Ja'ala.
Yeah, and our mission here is to really get under the hood of al-Ja'ala. We want to look at the core Sharia rulings, how it works in practice, and we'll be drawing heavily on Sharia standard number 15. We'll explore what makes it unique, why it's allowed even when things seem a bit uncertain, and crucially, how you see it used today, even how big players like financial institutions get involved.
Okay, so let's start there. Al-Ja'ala, what is it, basically, at its heart? How is it different from, say, hiring someone normally?
Right. So al-Ja'ala, at its core, is a contract. One party, they're called the jail, that's the one offering the reward. They promise to give a known payment, the jewel, that's the reward itself, to whoever manages to achieve a very specific pre-agreed result. The person doing the work is the amil. And here's a key thing, the time to get it done. It could be known, or it could be totally unknown. The focus is all on the outcome.
Ah, okay. So it really is about the result, not the hours clock, not the specific steps someone takes, necessarily. Sounds perfect for those messy situations where you can't predict the path. So what kind of things does this standard actually cover, and what's definitely out?
Exactly, you nailed the key difference. It's tailor-made for stuff where you just can't pin down the exact amount of work needed. Maybe it stretches over time. But yeah, it's important to know its limits. It's not for renting out physical things like leasing equipment.
Yep.
And it's not for your standard employment contract where the job description is clear. That's a whole different thing, ijaa. It also doesn't cover maintenance contracts or bits of them if they're just tacked onto other main agreements.
That uncertainty bit, though, that's usually a red flag in contracts, right?
Yeah.
So how does Al-Ja'ala handle that? Why is it considered legitimate when the actual work might be, well, fuzzy?
That's a really good question. And it gets to the heart of why al-Ja'ala is so useful. It is considered permissible, legitimate under Sharia. The main reason is that any ignorance or uncertainty, the technical term is jahala, about the exact amount of work, doesn't actually invalidate the contract. Why? Because the whole thing hangs on the clarity of the intended result. If that outcome is specific enough, the contract works.
I see.
It provides a framework where, traditional contracts that demand super precise work definitions just wouldn't work because of that inherent uncertainty.
It kind of provides a solution where maybe other legal systems might struggle because they demand that upfront precision about the how. It's a distinct tool for situations where a normal ijara, like an employment or service contract, just doesn't fit the bill.
Precisely. Ijara demands that the work is well-defined. Al-Ja'ala is for everything else, where the result is the defining factor.
Okay, let's dig into the mechanics then. What are the essential building blocks, the pillars you mentioned? If someone wants to set up an Al-Ja'ala, what absolutely needs to be in place?
Right, so there are three essential pillars. First up, the parties. In Arabic, al-Aqidan. This is simply the Ja'il, the one offering the reward, and the Amil, the one doing the work.
Now, the Amil, the worker, can that be anyone? Or does the jail have to pick someone specific? Like, if I lose my keys, can I just shout out 50 quid to whoever finds my keys? Or do I need to hire a specific person to look?
Great example. And yes, you absolutely can shout that out. The offer can be made to the general public. In that case, basically anyone who hears the offer can decide to take on the task. They can do it themselves or even get help from others, as long as they have the jail's consent, either stated outright or just implied. So yeah, offer away for those keys. Now, if you did make the offer to a specific person, then they would either do the work or supervise others doing it. And importantly, for both the jail and the amil, they need to have the legal capacity to actually make contracts. That's called aliyah al-qawl. Okay, second pillar. The formula or offer. Al-siyah. This is just how the contract is expressed. The offer, or ijab, can be public, like your key example, or directed at one person. It can be verbal, written, any way that clearly shows the request for the work and the promise of the reward, the jewel. And what's really interesting here, and different maybe, is that the amil doesn't need to formally say, yes, I accept. The simple act of them starting the work is taken as their acceptance. It makes it very fluid.
Wow, okay. No formal handshake needed, just get started.
Pretty much. And the third pillar is the subject of the contract. This covers two things, the work, al-amal, and the reward, al-Shul.
Let's talk about the work Alamal. You mentioned finding lost items. What other kinds of work fit this model? Can it be more complex?
Oh, absolutely. It can take many forms. It could be about creating something totally new, like an invention, a discovery, maybe developing a unique piece of software. It could be about providing specific information that helps the jail finding that lost item's details, or maybe some critical market research. Or, yes, simply returning the lost item itself. The key thing, again, even if the process isn't mapped out, the desired result has to be crystal clear.
Hmm.
And it has to involve real effort. It can't be something the Emil was already supposed to do anyway.
Makes sense. What about deadlines? Can the jail say, find my keys by 5 p.m. or the offer's off? Or does it just run until someone succeeds?
You can definitely set a time limit. After that time, the reward wouldn't be due anymore. However, there's a neat fairness rule. If the Emil is clearly right on the brink of finishing when the deadline hits, the period gets automatically extended a bit.
Ah.
Okay? And also important if the time runs out. But the email has done work that actually benefited the jail. Say they found clues or narrowed down the search. They're entitled to a fair market wage for that partial work. It's called arger al-misl. So effort that creates value isn't just wasted if the final goal isn't hit by the clock.
Okay, that's a good safety net. Now, the reward itself, the jewel, any specific rules for that? Does it have to be money?
The jewel, the reward, needs to be known. Both parties have to understand what it is. It has to have actual value, be Islamically permissible, so nothing forbidden, and it has to be something that can actually be delivered. Now, if for some reason the agreed reward turns out to be invalid, maybe it is something forbidden or impossible to hand over, then a fair market reward, jewel al-mithal, is due instead.
Yeah.
And your question about money, no, it doesn't have to be cash. It's actually permissible for the reward to be a percentage or a share of the very thing that Jalala is about. Think debt collection. The reward could be 10% of the debt recovered.
Right.
Or another cool form is giving the Emil the right to use or benefit from whatever they created or recovered for a set period. Like they build something and their reward is getting to use it for 5 years.
Interesting. So when does the Emil actually get their hands on this reward? Is it the second the job's done?
Generally, yes. The rule is the reward is due only when the work is fully completed and delivered to the jail. But there are a few exceptions or nuances. For instance, if the thing being worked on belongs to someone else, not the jail, maybe you offered a reward to find your neighbor's cat, the Emil still earns the reward from you, the jail. Also, if the item gets damaged while the Emil is working, but it wasn't their fault, no negligence or anything, they still get the full reward. It's also possible to agree on advance payments. You could pay some or all of the jewel up front, but these are treated as payments on account. If the final result isn't achieved, the jail generally have the right to get that advance back.
Okay, this brings up the nature of the agreement itself. Is al-Jala binding once the offer is out there? Like if I offer that reward for my keys, am I stuck? Or is it more flexible?
That's a key point.
Yeah.
The basic principle is that al-Jala is fundamentally non-binding at first, meaning before anyone starts the work, either party can just walk away. However, it becomes binding on the jail, the one offering the reward, as soon as the Emil actually starts the work.
Yeah.
And for the Emil, it becomes binding on them once they properly take on the task as described. So it transitions from flexible to committed.
Right. So what if someone does want out after work has begun? Say, I offer a reward for someone to design a logo. They start sketching, but then I change my mind. Or maybe they decide it's too hard.
Good scenarios.
Yeah.
If the jail cancels after the Emil has started, the Emil deserves that fair market wage,
Yeah.
Ajar al-Mithal, but only for the work they've already done that actually provides some benefit. If it's the Emil who walks away, they generally get nothing, unless there was a prior agreement saying otherwise, or if they had a really good reason for stopping, that wasn't their fault. In those specific cases, they might get paid proportionally for the benefit the jail received from their partial work. And just a side note, while the Emil is handling any items related to the work, their responsibility is considered a hand of trust, yad amana. This means they're generally not liable if something gets lost or damaged, unless it was due to their own clear mistake or negligence.
It really sounds like al-Jala is perfectly shaped for these specific kinds of situations, offering a way forward that maybe other contracts don't. So let's really crystallize this. How does it stack up against the more common ajara, the lease or employment contract? Why is knowing the difference important for, someone listening who's trying to figure out the right tool for their situation?
Yeah, understanding the contrast with ijara is crucial for knowing when to use al-Ja'ala. Let's break down the key differences. First, uncertainty of work. This is the big one. Al-Ja'ala works even if the exact effort is unclear, as long as the result is clear. Ijara. Nope. It demands the work itself be precisely defined from the get-go.
Right. That's the fundamental split.
Second, acceptance. We touched on this. Al-Ja'ala doesn't need a formal "I accept." Starting the work is enough. Ijara usually needs explicit agreement from both sides.
Much more formal.
Third, why you get paid. In Al-Ja'ala, the reward depends only on successfully delivering the specific result. That's it. With Ijara, you're typically paid for the time you put in or the effort itself, regardless of whether you hit a specific grand outcome. Pay per hour versus pay for result, basically.
Okay, clear distinction.
Fourth, who does the work? Al-Ja'ala can be an open call, like finding those lost keys anyone can try. Ijara is usually with a specific named person or company. And finally, binding nature. As we said, Al-Ja'ala starts non-binding, giving flexibility, then becomes binding. Ijara contracts are generally binding right from the moment they're agreed upon. Less wiggle room.
That's a super helpful breakdown. Given all that flexibility and its unique nature, where are we actually seeing Al-Ja'ala used in the real world today, especially maybe in business or finance, beyond the lost keys examples?
Oh, it has some really relevant modern applications. It's surprisingly versatile. Think about resource exploration. Contracts for prospecting, mining for minerals, drilling for oil or water. The reward is often conditional on actually finding something. No discovery, no fee, or a much smaller one.
Makes sense for high-risk ventures.
Exactly. A very common one is debt recovery. Agencies often work on a Ja'ala basis. They only get paid or get their main commission if they successfully recover the debt or a part of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's also used in securing financing. Maybe a consultant works to get a company a loan or arrange complex syndicated financing. Their fee might be contingent on the deal actually closing, assuming it's all Shari'ah compliant, of course. And classic brokerage services, right? Real estate agents, business brokers, their commission usually depends entirely on the sale or deal going through successfully.
The ultimate results-based fee.
Precisely. And finally, it's fantastic for innovation and creativity. You can use it to incentivize major breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, new inventions, unique designs. The reward is tied directly to achieving that specific innovation, like getting the patent or creating the final design.
Wow, that covers a lot of ground, from digging in the earth to high finance and pure creativity. So how do big organizations like banks or financial institutions play in this space? Can they be the jail or the Emil or maybe both?
Absolutely, they can be on either side and often are. An institution could act as the Emil, doing the work. Maybe they're hired for debt collection or to structure that financing. Or, interestingly, they could take on the main Ja'ala contract and then subcontract parts of it out using what's called a parallel Ja'ala. Basically, they create another Ja'ala agreement with someone else to do some or all of the work.
Ah, like layers of Jala.
Kind of, yeah. The key thing there is that these parallel contracts shouldn't be automatically linked back in terms of obligation unless the original agreement specifically said the institution had to do the work themselves. And conversely, an institution can easily be the JAL. They might offer a reward to get some work done for their own benefit, or maybe offer a Ja'ala to fulfill a promise they made to someone else. And again, they might use parallel Ja'ala arrangements in that scenario too.
This has been a really fascinating deep dive into Al-Ja'ala. It's definitely not just some historical footnote. It feels like a really practical, very relevant tool for structuring agreements where the result is king, especially when the how is a bit foggy.
It really is. I think it beautifully shows how Islamic finance offers these sophisticated, nuanced ways to handle different kinds of transactions. It puts the focus squarely on fair pay for results achieved, not just for showing up or putting in hours. It's quite an elegant solution for complex challenges.
So for everyone listening, what's the takeaway? Maybe the next time you're facing a challenge or you have a goal, but the exact path isn't clear. Whether it's trying to find something, spark some innovation, or tackle a tricky recovery. Think about whether a Ja'ala structure might be the right fit. It's this powerful idea that really prioritizes the what's the outcome over the how. And that could unlock a whole lot of potential for getting things done, solving problems, all while keeping things fair and clear. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.